Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com. Monday through Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. Ray Flowers breaks it all down for you from a fantasy sports perspective. Hey there, Ray Flowers of FantasyGuru.com. How you doing today? Hopefully well. For those of you wondering why the green screen is green behind me, I don't know. This is the first time this has happened, and we're show 272, as you can see here on Fantasy Sports Daily, Monday through Friday, 12 o'clock Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific Time. It's the first time I've been unable to get the background to work. So I sent a note to the tech department. We're trying to figure it out. So unfortunately, there's no cool picture behind me today, just a green screen. So probably should have put the green screen down and just showed my background now that I think about it. I got pictures and stuff on the wall. Too late for that now. We'll just go with what we got. Everything else seems to be working fine, and that's the important thing. You can hear me, you can see me, and there's lots of good things to talk about. I am Ray Flowers of FantasyGuru.com. Again, Monday through Friday here on Fantasy Sports Daily. I'm on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Justin Fensterman's on Wednesdays. But this show is on Monday through Friday at that 12 EST time. And we usually go about an hour. It's a free show. Tell a friend. Spread the word, that kind of thing. We're doing all kinds of football right now, obviously. Once the football season starts to die down, we'll start talking a little bit more basketball. We'll certainly dive into baseball. For those people that didn't see us because you just found us, or you know, whatever, you're not a baseball person per se, we covered baseball all the way through the last day of the regular season. So while everyone else stopped 2 months earlier, we kept talking about baseball every single day here on the show, and we'll do that again in 2025. You can follow me on Twitter X, on Instagram, Blue Sky, TikTok, all those places, even though I don't use them all, at the Ray Flowers. You can find me here again Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. On Wednesdays, you can find me with Jeff Mans on the Elite Sports Show on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. That show is 3 to 6 Eastern, Monday through Friday. I'm there Wednesdays. So when I'm not here on Wednesday, I'm there on Wednesday. Got the matchup article that just went up over at FantasyGuru.com. I think the matchup article this week is like 12,000 words. It all depends. Sometimes it's 10 and a half. Sometimes it's 14. I look at all the matchups, talk about all of them from a fantasy perspective. So big article there. You can check that out over at FantasyGuru.com. My Coffin Corner piece comes out tomorrow. You know how it goes. And I've actually started writing baseball for 2025. It's happened. We've done it. I know. What are we talking about today? Well, here's what we're talking about today. It's a Thursday. Every Thursday, we visit with Tyler Beaker of FantasyGuru.com. He'll be on in about a half hour. He'll join the club, and he will be ready to rock and roll. We'll talk Thursday Night Football. We'll talk what's going on with the Eagles, what's going on with the Commanders. We'll also, as you can see there on the screen, have a couple discussions about some offenses. The Vikings, the Colts, the Dolphins. What is going on with these offenses? We'll talk to Tyler about that here. And again, about 25, 30 minutes. Before that, we'll talk about some players in the news. I didn't get a chance to react to Gardner Minshew and Anthony Richardson on this show. We did yesterday on SiriusXM, but didn't get a chance to do it here. So we'll talk about that. Brian Robinson's back tonight. What's going on with Tyreek, Tank Bigsby, Brian Thomas, Michael Pittman, T. Higgins, LaPorta, Kittle, Dalton. All these guys dealing with some physical issues this week, so we'll talk a little bit about that. But before we do that, I wanted to talk about this directly because it continues to come up, and I know a lot of people, timestamps and all this kind of stuff. So we're just going to talk about it at the start of the show. Just so I can tell everyone, episode 272 started the show. This is what we're talking about. And as you can see there, we're talking about an honest talk about running back depth. And I mentioned this on the Elite Sports Show yesterday. If anyone was in Discord over at FantasyGuru.com, you saw me use capital letters, which I never do. I got a little frustrated the other day. So let's deal with this topic for the 500th time. I'm exaggerating a little bit because I've answered this question this year 1,500 times. Only exaggerating a little bit there. Every single day of my life, I get do I want, Ray Davis or Zach Charbonnet or Trey Benson or Braylon Allen or Roshan Johnson every single day. And the question has no answer in the broad context of who do I want? Because all of those guys, Davis, Charbonnet, Benson, Allen, Roshan Johnson, whoever these backups are, all of these guys are scoring anywhere between 2 and 7 points a week, right? They'll be the random touchdown, all right? But they're 2 to 7 point a week guys. And for some reason, a lot of people would rather get the 7 point a week guy than the 2 point a week guy because it makes them feel better. If you're starting a guy that's scoring 7 points a week, you've lost. Number one. Number two, you can always go to the waiver wire unless you're in a really deep league. Any person in a 10 or 12 team league can go to the waiver wire and find someone scoring 6 or 7 points, right? You can do that. Just grab a random tight end, right? It's catching 3 balls for 30 yards. Whoopie-doo. You can always find that on the waiver wire. So holding the running back, the backup running back that's scoring more points doesn't do anything for you. Unless you're in a rare league, and there's a few. Unless you're in one of the rare leagues where bench points matter. Because 99% of league bench points don't matter. So at the end of the day, when you ask me, do I want Benson or Allen or Charbonnet or Roschon Johnson, I can't give you an answer that works. Because all you're asking me to do when you ask that question is you're asking me to tell you which running back 1 is going to get hurt, which then gives running back 2 value. Whether you believe in handcuffing or not, and I know a lot of people hate it, a lot of people think it's dumb, a lot of people philosophically just don't agree with it. Totally understand that. I agree with it, but I understand if you don't agree with it. Okay. None of that matters anymore. It's week 11 in the NFL season. Now, whether you believe it or not, it's time to start handcuffing your running backs. Do it. Because what we're seeing across the land, right, is we have 4 teams on bye this week. We've got 6 teams on bye coming up here. Like, there's a lot of injuries people are dealing with. There's a ton of bye weeks people are dealing with. With all the injuries people are dealing with, and then with all these teams on bye, handcuffs are getting dropped all over the place. Because the people that do the rando, I don't have Breece Hall, but I grab Braylon Allen, it doesn't do them any good. They can't play him. It doesn't matter. Makes them feel good. Doesn't matter. They drop Braylon Allen because they need to make a move to get a wide receiver this week because they don't have wide receiver 3 to start in the lineup. You know, Roschon Johnson, he's chucked. I've seen people add Khalil Herbert, and this is fascinating. We said get Khalil Herbert because he's a solid running back. He certainly could have a big role with that Bengals team if something were to happen to Chase Brown. People added Herbert on that advice, and then they dropped him already. It's like, what did you expect to happen? Backup running backs don't do anything. There's a portion of backup running backs, Jalen Warren, Tajay Spears, Gus Edwards, Jahmyr Gibbs, right? There's some backup running backs that have roles. Some of them big ones, Jahmyr Gibbs. But the majority of backup running backs, Austin Ekeler's another guy you can use. But a lot of these backup running backs, over half the league's backup running backs, don't get involved. They touch the ball 6 times a week. They're not part of the offense. So at the end of the day, handcuff your guys. If you were Bijan Robinson owner and someone just dropped Tyler Algier because they needed to make a move at wide receiver, go get Tyler Algier. Even if you don't believe in handcuffing, do it. It's the right way to build your team, especially at this point in the year, because if you have Bijan Robinson and he goes down with an injury and all you've got on the bench is Trey Benson, you're screwed. You just went from 20 points a week to 6. You're screwed. It's like you have a whole player out of your lineup. You're down an entire player versus your opponent. So at the end, I get the question. I totally understand and get the question. Which of these backup running backs do I want? But I'm so damn tired of answering it because there's no answer. All you're asking me to do is predict who's going to get hurt because there are very few scenarios where the backup running back plays enough. Gus Edwards is a perfect example. Gus Edwards has come up a lot, right? He's back off the injured list. Kamani Vidal can now be dropped. Gus Edwards is back. People are, Gus Edwards. Gus Edwards either scores a touchdown and gives you 13 points, or he doesn't score a touchdown and he gives you 7 points. That's it. That's it. 9 carries for 55 yards, 1 catch for 3 yards. That's it. He either gets in the end zone to give you those 13 points, or he's scoring single digits, period. And even when he scores the touchdown, it's 14 points. It's nothing fantastic. It's not 122 yards and a touchdown. It's 52 yards and a touchdown. It doesn't do anything. That is what it is. If you need the stable 7 points, Gus Edwards is fine to have, right? I don't know why you'd want the 7 points as we talked about. That doesn't do you any good. So if you're in a scenario where you don't have J.K. Dobbins and you don't have James Conner and you say to me, do I want Edwards or Benson? I'm going to tell you to get Benson. Because if Conner goes down with an injury, Benson's touching it 16 times a week, and he's going to have a much bigger top end than Edwards, and he's going to have a higher floor. So remember all this, okay? And again, I don't want to be preachy or anything, and I don't want to have fake anger or anything. I'm just really tired of answering this question over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, especially because there's no real answer to the question. You don't have to listen to what I'm saying. You don't have to take my advice. You don't have to do what I say. That's fine. But then don't ask me the question because I'm going to say the same thing every time. And I'm about to the point, if I'm being honest, I'm about to the point where I'm not even going to answer the question anymore. I'm going to pull a Jeff Mans here. There might be some questions I'm just going to stop answering because I'm tired of answering this question week after week after week. By the way, for those people wondering, we do have a running back handcuff grid over at fantasyguru.com. It gets updated every single week. It's color-coded. We list the starter, the handcuff, and the third down back. So check that out. It's fantasyguru.com/2024-RB-handcuff-grid. Check it out over at fantasyguru.com. You might say to yourself, Ray, I don't have a subscription to fantasyguru.com. I can help you out there. We have a huge new deal that you can see on the screen now over at fantasyguru.com. For $99 the rest of the way, you get all of our football stuff. And when I say all of it, I mean you get all of the seasonal. So you get the running back grid, you get the articles, you get the rankings. You get access to all the DFS. You want to read the cash game breakdown, see what all the hullabaloo is about? You can get access to that. You want to play GPP? Get access to that. You want to get involved in the wagering? You want to win some cash with some bets? You get access to that. So for $99, you get all the seasonal football. You get all the DFS football. You get all the wagering football for $99.99. And that gets you access to every Discord room for those three areas. So you can ask questions for all of that as well. The only thing the rest of the season that this doesn't cover is our Super Bowl betting guide. Super Bowl betting guide is something separate. It's like $20. That's the only thing. Every other thing we do for football right now, get it at fantasyguru.com. Costs only $99. Subscribe tab in the top right corner. You can always send a note to the support at fantasyguru.com. Send that email. Support at fantasyguru.com if you got a question. Pretty damn good deal, if I do say so myself. All right, let's talk a little bit about Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson is the quarterback now of the Colts. And this one, again, I talked about this yesterday on the Elite Sports Show. So if you heard that, sorry, there'll be some replays of what I'm saying, I'm sure. I don't understand this at all. They made Flacco the quarterback, and they said Flacco's the quarterback the rest of the season. Flacco then plays a couple of poor games. Now they're saying Richardson's the quarterback, and he's the quarterback for the rest of the season. And I brought this up yesterday. I wonder what the locker room is like. Because it's one thing to say he's our starter this week, and we'll see how it goes. Right? We believe in him. We'll see how it goes. It's another thing to declare to the nation, to the world, Joe Flacco's our guy. He's our guy the rest of the season. And then a couple of weeks later, say, well, no, Anthony Richardson's our guy, and he's our guy the rest of the season. I don't know if the players believe the coaches anymore. I don't know. I know that I have a hard time believing the coaches, right? There's weirdness going on. Michael Pittman last week with his team obviously is inactive, the back and the thumb. Wednesday this week, he's fully practicing and good to go. Like he didn't even play last week, and on Wednesday, he's a full go at practice. That doesn't even make sense. I don't know what's going on here. I know the bottom line is Anthony Richardson's the quarterback. It sounds like he's going to be the quarterback the rest of the season. He is not a quarterback one. He is a super flex second QB option only. He is playing terrible football. He doesn't complete passes. He's like at 45% completion rate, which is so bad. I mean, that is so bad. That's like you getting an F in school. It's so bad. Now, he might complete 13 passes for 200 yards because he rips off of 3 40-yard passes. I mean, you never know. There will be big plays. But he's terrible at the underneath stuff. I don't think you can trust Michael Pittman at all at this point. Not just because of his health, but because there's just no connection there. That Pittman doesn't run routes that make sense for Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson is not somebody in a 1 QB league I'm even really interested in adding. Again, there's the 30-point ceiling. There is. But he scored 20 points once this year. He's been hurt off and on for 2 years now. I'm just not an Anthony Richardson guy. I'm not an Anthony Richardson guy. I'm not starting Michael Pittman this week. I'm barely starting Josh Downs as the wide receiver 3. Even that makes me feel nervous. The only person this doesn't affect, I don't think, is Jonathan Taylor. If anything, it might help Jonathan Taylor a little bit. That's not fair. It probably doesn't help Jonathan Taylor, but he's still starting and he's still a running back 1. But Richardson's just been so unbelievably bad. All right, let's see here. Gardner Minshew. Sorry, I was looking at it. I got an IM. This is always how it goes. We talked about this the other day on the show. I'm on the show, and we all have different times. We're in different time zones. We all forget. I was looking at an IM. Sorry about the brief hiccup. Gardner Minshew is the starter for the Raiders. We heard some rumors this week that Desmond Ridder would be the guy. Desmond Ridder's not the guy. Now, Gardner Minshew's not the guy either. But it's really fascinating that the Raiders continue to try to get rid of Gardner Minshew. I don't know if he's wronged Antonio Pierce, rubbed people the wrong way. I don't know what it is. But they brought him in this season to ostensibly be their starting quarterback this year, and they've tried to replace him multiple times already. I don't know. So, Myers, Bowers, fire him up. The rest of the offense, you're not interested in. They did change their OC, the Raiders, so we'll have to watch very closely how they deploy the backfield this week. We've talked about this previously. I missed on Zamir White. We missed on Zamir White, too, at fantasyguru.com. He's been awful. But I think there's a 50-50 chance he's the lead running back for this team the rest of the way. If Zamir White was on the waiver wire, I would try to add him. Now, again, a lot of you have all-star teams, and it's just not feasible. But if you're in a deeper league and he's sitting there on the waiver wire, I would add Zamir White because Alexander Madison's not it, right? We know that. Maybe White could be it for this team. Tyreek Hill didn't practice on Wednesday because of his wrist. I'm not a Tyreek Hill guy. I haven't been a Tyreek Hill guy for years. Actually, I've never been a Tyreek Hill guy. I don't appreciate what he's done off the field, and I don't think I've ever rostered him, to be honest. I don't think I've ever done it. And that's my decision, and okay. Last couple of years, it's been a bad decision in essence because he's catching 119 balls for 1,700 yards. This year, it's paid off great because he's a mess. He's got a wrist that he's claiming is hurt. And I said this, I have a messed up left shoulder. I'm doing therapy all the time on it right now. I've got multiple tears in the rotator cuff of my left shoulder. Could I play a football game and get hit? Absolutely not. I would die. I'm sure the pain would be horrendous. But I'm still able to do my job, right? I still do my exercises. I still do my job. Okay. The reason I say that is because Tyreek Hill doesn't have a shoulder problem. He's got a wrist issue. Has Tyreek Hill dropped half the passes thrown his way? Nope. Has Tyreek Hill been doing push-ups and all these other things with his injured wrist? Yep. Stop blaming your wrist, dude, for your not being able to perform. You run really fast to get in an opening and catch a ball. Catch it against your chest if you have to. Body catch it, right? Tyreek Hill's lack of production this year has nothing to do with his wrist. Zero. Nothing to do with his wrist. It's everything else. He didn't practice on Wednesday. Still expect him to play this week. Still a top 20 wide receiver. I think we have him inside the top 15 right now at fantasyguru.com. You know, if I had Tyreek Hill, I don't know how you bench him. But it's been really, really rough. Moving on to the did work on his TD celebration for 2 hours. Yeah, bro. Tyreek missed practice, but he did work on his touchdown celebration for 2 hours. That mainly involved using his wrist. That's probably pretty accurate, bro. Yeah, he sure looks healthy on touchdown celebrations, doesn't he? Yeah, good point. Brian Robinson has been removed from the injury report. This is really good news. Obviously, his addition solidifies the backfield of the Commanders. He's been very effective for this team. They play tonight again. We'll talk a little bit more about this game in particular with Tyler Buecher in 10-15 minutes. But Brian Robinson's back. He's been removed from the injury report. Apparently the hamstring is good to go. So it's fair to look at Robinson and hope / expect 12 to 15 touches tonight and hopefully some goal line work. So this is really good news. We'll again get Tyler's thoughts on Robinson in the matchup tonight. Robinson could get 18 carries and run for 100 yards and a touchdown. You know, he's been very effective this season. The offensive line has done a great job. Austin Ekeler's been effective running the ball. McNichols has been effective running the ball at times. Rodriguez has been effective running the ball at times. If you have Brian Robinson, he's obviously a running back 2 this week. We'll talk more about him in a few minutes with Tyler. Now, a guy who's been a running back 2 is Tank Bigsby. And the Jaguars are all kinds of a mess. Mac Jones will start again this week because Trevor Lawrence is out yet again. Tank Bigsby's got an ankle injury he's been dealing with. And that really came up last week when ETN, had more work, right? So the question becomes, was that ETN getting more work because now it's ETN's job? Is he finally healthy? It's his job again? Or is it merely because Tank Bigsby was beat up? Well, I don't know if we're going to have an answer this week because Tank Bigsby missed practice yesterday with the ankle issue. Now, it's certainly possible they're just managing his reps at practice. Certainly possible. He absolutely could be out there on the weekend and all that. At this point, I don't know how you start either running back and feel good about it. I would be starting ETN ahead of Bigsby. Bigsby, to me, is the dart throw this week. ETN is the more stable play. Again, I don't really want to start either one. You have injuries. You're dealing with bye weeks. I understand we may not have options, right? But Bigsby right now, even if he's active, I'm just not. And he may not be active. And if he's not active, then you feel better about ETN because then it's not 12 touches, maybe then it's 18 touches. Now, that's, of course, predicated on the belief that Mac Jones, can move the ball enough for this team to actually produce some yards because they actually have snaps. We'll see how it goes this week. Next up at the wide receiver spot with that team, Brian Thomas. And Jeff Mans and I talked about him yesterday on the Elite Sports Show. And Brian Thomas, overall has had a really good rookie season. Like there's not a real negative here with him. He's done a very good job. Now, if we pull back from that, he's been looked at because his production was trending in that direction as a wide receiver 2 in the fantasy space. And if you look at him from weeks 4 to 8, he scored 4 touchdowns in 5 games. Well, there you go. He averaged 75 yards and 1/8 of a touchdown a game. That starts every week as a wide receiver 2. However, the last 2 weeks, one of which was with Lawrence, one of which was with Jones. The last 2 weeks as he deals with this chest injury, 2 catches for 22 yards, 2 catches for 12 yards. It's not just the lack of production that stands out with him, because that production is obviously terrible. It's not just that. He's got last 4 games. Here are his target totals: 5, 4, 4, 3. They're not throwing him the ball. And it's not just, clearly it's because of Mac Jones. Now, that was a season of 3 targets for Mac Jones. But in other games this year with Trevor Lawrence, we just talked about it. 4 targets with Lawrence, 4 targets with Lawrence, 5 targets with Lawrence. Weeks 1 and 2, 4 and 4. They don't throw them the ball. They don't throw the ball to him enough. Sorry, I had to send a note. Inner workings there. Can you hear the typing? Can you hear that? I'll have to go check it out after the show. But bottom line is with Brian Thomas, can you bench him? Depends who you got, but he's trending toward being a wide receiver 4 pretty quick. Part of it, I think, is his health. Part of it's the messed up offense, of course. Part of it's the lack of volume here. Again, we're looking at, he's got 11 targets in 3 games. Blake Neighbors gets 11 targets a week. Thomas has got 11 in 3 games. So it's really touchdown or bust for him. And, given the way the offense has operated of late, and given the play of Mac Jones last week, Brian Thomas is not a must start. So keep that in mind. Michael Pittman, we talked about him. He's practicing in full. This is weird. Rarely, if ever, does a player miss a game with injury, and then the following Monday, he's full at practice. It's always limited, right? Logically. Somehow, from Sunday where he couldn't play a football game to Wednesday, he got better. I don't know. I don't know what's going on there. I think it's more about the situation with his quarterback than it is about Pittman anyway. I said this yesterday, and I said it again today. I'm not starting Pittman. Until Pittman goes out there and shows me a connection with Anthony Richardson, I'm not starting him. And when I mean I'm not starting him, I'm in a 12-team league with 3 wide receivers. I'm not starting him. I'm in a 14-team league with 3 wide receivers. I don't want to start him. I don't want him. He's done nothing this season. He's done nothing. He's got a quarterback that doesn't figure to support him. He's got injuries. He might be full at practice, but he's got multiple injuries he's dealt with for a while now. I'm just not. I don't have Pittman on any team this year. I didn't draft Pittman because I was concerned about Anthony Richardson anyway. If you have him, maybe you still got to go with him. Again, injuries, bye weeks. But I really don't want to start Michael Pittman this week. Now, T. Higgins is different. T. Higgins is the next guy to talk about. He's got that quad injury. He was limited at practice yesterday. The wheels of motion are turning toward T. Higgins being active this week. If T. Higgins is active this week, I can feel very solid about him being in your starting lineup. Now, I said this yesterday, too, with Jeff when we were talking about it. Again, that's 3 to 6, Monday through Friday on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. There have been times where T. Higgins has been active and not played. I think there was I should have looked this up. I'm pretty sure he had a game where he played 2 snaps. Right? Didn't that happen? Where he was active and no one knew that he was active, but he wasn't going to play. There have also been games where he's been active and he hasn't done anything. They haven't targeted him at all. He hasn't been part of the offense. I'm looking back here, see if I can find that game as we're talking. In 2000, maybe it was this one. 2022, he played 1 snap in week 14. Maybe that was it. Because the week before that, he played 61 snaps. The week after, he played 50 snaps. But in week 14, he played 1 snap. I don't know. Maybe he got hurt that game, and I'm remembering it wrong. Anyway, the bottom line is that Higgins is working with a quarterback in Joe Burrow who is smoking hot. Burrow's up to 24 touchdown passes and 4 interceptions. He is the best non-running quarterback in fantasy football right now. Jamar Chase is blowing up. Jamar Chase gets all the attention on the other side of the football field. And what does T. Higgins do? He just goes out and produces when he's on the field. So he's played 5 games this year, and he's averaging 6 catches for 68 yards. Pretty damn good. If you look at the final 4 games he played before this most recent injury, it's 6.5 catches for 76 yards with 3 touchdowns in 4 games. With the way Joe Burrow's flinging it, with the way the offense operates, T. Higgins is active if he's active. Way better start this week than Brian Thomas. Infinitely better start this week than Michael Pittman. Better start than Josh Downs. T. Higgins is a starter for you if he's active this week for the Bengals. All right, next wide receiver to talk about. No, we're done for now. There's more wide receivers we could talk about, but let's talk a little bit about the tight end position before we welcome in Tyler Buecher here. By the way, I'm a little cheery today. If I'm talking fast, I apologize. Started putting up the holiday decorations. I listened to Jeff Manns the other day, and Jeff was like, hey, man, Thanksgiving's a little later this year, and there's a lot of negativity in the world. So we throw up multiple Christmas trees at my house. We really get into the spirit. But the downstairs Christmas tree is up. It's lit. I sat down there last night, put it all together. Now it's lit. So I'm feeling good. So I woke up today feeling good. So maybe that's why I'm talking fast. At the tight end position, Sam LaPorta's got the shoulder issue that we know about. I think the term was hopeful. Is that what his head coach, sorry, wrong sport. Head coach said hopeful, I think was the word that was used, that he'd be able to play through his shoulder injury. He's got an AC joint sprain, which I'm learning about because I told you I have a shoulder issue. It's something in theory he could play through, but they got to be sure that they're comfortable that he's not going to injure it more substantially. They're obviously looking. The Lions are Super Bowl bound. Like, they don't need Sam LaPorta this week. Like, they could, even if they lost a football game, it's not the end of the world. I don't think LaPorta's even been a huge part of the offense. Lately, he's produced a little bit more, but he's still not a huge part of the offense, certainly compared to what he did last year. So I think at this point in time, and I said this earlier in the week, I don't love carrying 2 tight ends, and it matters what your league setup is. If you're in a league where you can add guys up till game time, there's no reason to add a second tight end right now. If you're in a 16-team league and there's no tight ends available, maybe you make a move. But if you're in a 10 or 12-team league, like, what's the difference between, Juwan Johnson and Ty Conklin? They're kind of the same guys. So you don't have to add a tight end now. But if there are usable, like if Will Dissly's on the waiver wire, if David Njoku's on the waiver wire because he got dropped during the bye week, like, people do stupid things. It's okay to make a move if you have Sam LaPorta, because I just don't know if he's going to play this week. I also don't know if George Kittle's going to play this week. So same advice stands for George Kittle. Kittle's got a hamstring injury. We talked about that after the game. Kittle has been on the field and healthy this season. We know his track record is one of not playing every game. Part of the reason for that is dude is a football player. All right. And he does everything on that football field at 100%. He's a phenomenal football player. He really is a phenomenal football player. But his style of play opens him up to injury. Got a hamstring injury now for the Niners. We'll see. The expectation is he's going to practice today. So that's good news. So he might be closer to playing than LaPorta, but keep an eye on the news with George Kittle, because obviously that's a big piece to be without in your offense. And if that happens, we then have to reassess the outlooks for guys like Pearsall and Jennings, because now there's more targets to go around at the wide receiver position, because the Niners don't have anyone they can turn to at the tight end spot that's going to get 6 targets. Finally, Dalton Kincaid's got the knee injury. We don't know if he's going to play this week. Dawson Knox is the obvious pivot with his own team. In the past, Knox scored 15 touchdowns in 2021-22, I think. Like, he was a red zone threat. He can still be a red zone threat, even if he's not a guy really being utilized between the 20s. He could slide in there for Dawson Knox, catch 3, 4, 5 passes this week, maybe get in the end zone. You could do a lot worse as a streaming tight end option than Dawson Knox this week, provided Kincaid is out. I don't think you have to necessarily go and grab Knox at this point in time, because, again, Dalton Kincaid could play. Even if he doesn't play, what are the odds that, Knox goes in and scores 14 points this week? Kincaid's not even scoring 14 points a week. So, it's a very moderate, let's hope he gets in the end zone, otherwise he's giving us 7 or 8 points kind of thing. So there's no need to go out now and aggressively get Knox. But keep that in mind if you do need a pivot. If Kincaid is out, you might even be able to just look at the same team and not even have to go random on the waiver wire to find somebody else. So there's that. So that's a review of, kind of what I wanted to talk about here, kind of broad picture things, talking about the backup running backs, talking about injuries across the land. And now it's time, about half an hour into the show on Thursday. And half an hour into the show every Thursday, we bring in my man, Tyler Buecher. You can find him over at fantasyguru.com. You can find him on Twitter X at Tyler Buecher. That's TYLERBUECHER. You can find him doing work whether it's DFS or wagering or seasonal over at fantasyguru.com. So that promo code on the promo on the screen, the $99 for the rest of the season for the football product, get you everything our guest writes all year long the rest of the way. That's Tyler Baker of fantasyguru.com. How you doing, Tyler?
Doing great. That's a hell of a promo. I didn't realize it included everything. DFS, seasonal. Excited for that one.
Yeah, it started yesterday. We're really great at telling all of our staff members. I'd heard Jeff Mann say it on the radio. So, yeah, I didn't even officially was told about it. Yeah, it's $99 for everything. It doesn't include the Super Bowl wagering package. That's different. But other than that, it's everything. So, folks, you can read Tyler's seasonal work, his DFS work, his wagering work. You can bug him in all the chat rooms, the Discord rooms. You'll have access to all that. So check it out. Subscribe tab in the top right corner of the site. Looks like you got an Eagles jersey on. I can't tell who you got there. Who is it?
It's an AJ Brown one.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Going with the little Kelly Green AJ
Harold
Brown.
Carmichael or something, but I guess that's too old for you. You remember Harold Carmichael?
I'm aware of him.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably a better way to say it. I'm probably 15 years older than you, Tyler. Maybe more. Who knows? Thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it. Looking good with the shirt there. Lots of storylines to talk about. Before we talk Thursday Night Football with you, I wanted to ask you a couple of things. I spent a good deal of time here before you came on talking about Anthony Richardson, Michael Pittman, Josh Downs. What does this offense look like now with the Colts, with Richardson under center? Is it Jonathan Taylor and that's it? Or is there something else to still be seen now that Richardson's the quarterback again?
Well, we've kind of already done this song and dance earlier with the back and forth between Flacco. So we kind of know to downgrade Downs and Pittman. These guys go from like wide receiver 2, 3 kind of caliber players to flex only plays. Pierce, AD Mitchell, these types of wideouts, I think they're more boom bust DFS starts than players you want to ever roster in a seasonal format. Maybe in a 16-team league, maybe in a dynasty squad where you're hurting elsewhere, but that's probably it. Anthony Richardson, we know he's a weekly wild card. I will note that this is a great week to utilize him against the Jets. We just saw Kyler Murray hit his ceiling rushing for 2 scores against the Jets last week. That's the type of performance I'd expect Richardson to do. Mainly being utilized as a runner because the Jets are very, very beatable on the ground. He and Jonathan Taylor, I think they'll make a great 1-2 tandem this upcoming matchup. But weekly, it's just going to be a frustrating situation. I drafted Richardson in several start-sit formats. He's long been gone from my fantasy benches. I do not care about picking him up again. I'm fine taking the L rest of the season. If he wants to turn things around, great. I'll draft him next season. For now, I'm content with everyone else I've been able to grab off waivers.
People had what they thought was an answer, Tyler, at the quarterback position after the first 5 or 6 weeks with a guy who's never been the answer, Sam Darnold of the Vikings. Last couple of times out, people the ghost thing starting to come up again. And, it's just not, the production's not there. And people starting to get a little worried about Justin Jefferson. Where is that passing attack right now with the Vikings?
Yeah, I'm not backing off the Vikings. Lots of poor things happened last week. 3 interceptions. I think that's what really grabs a lot of attention. One was bounced off Justin Jefferson's hands. The other 2 were double team plays where Jefferson was bracketed basically. And we saw Darnold try to throw it in to tight windows, both one in the end zone, one at like the 1 or 2 yard line. So he's aggressively going for scores. This team had several stalled drives that ended up at field goals over touchdowns. This team still racked up 400 yards of offense. I feel like we're like kind of going a little bit crazy here. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm just a Vikings secret homer where I'm really just enjoying what they do because they're aggressive on offense with their play calling. They're aggressive on defense with their play calling. And it's just such a change. Like when I look back at like there's a Hail Mary situation where the Vikings were playing, I think it was the Lions, and they blitzed him on the Hail Mary. Who does that? Everyone else is sending 2 or 3 rushers.
Right.
Jared Goff never had a chance to get rid of the ball. Like that's what I love about this Vikings team. And for that reason, I think they're still competitive in every single matchup. Their defense gives them a chance. Their offense is throwing heavily, consistently. They got a good offensive line. I mean, they need, the Cam Robinson to stop making penalties on the left tackle. But yeah, I like what they're doing. So I'm still in on the Vikings, still buying everybody, even Darnold. I think he's still in the streaming conversation. I'm drawing a blank right now who they play this week, but I think he's in play for streaming.
I'm drawing a blank too. I'll pull it up real quickly here. They are playing Tennessee.
Yeah, Titans are injured in the secondary quite a bit. If they are without L'Jarius Sneed once again, really would like the Vikings.
Tyler Baker of fantasyguru.com. Before we talk Thursday Night Football with Tyler, one final question. Where is the Miami offense at? I mean, the offensive line is different than last year, but all the skill players are the same. No one is producing like they did last year, I guess, other than Achane. Mostert didn't even get on the field last time out. Tyreek Hill's using his wrist as an excuse for not producing, which I think is hilarious. Jalen Waddle has one game of like 10 PPR points. Like, what the hell's going on with this offense now that 2 is back? It's been better, still not good.
No, it hasn't. I want to blame play calling. Like, that's just not really great coaching here by McDaniel. They do have a home matchup here against the Raiders. Maybe that's the get-right spot they need for everyone to finally turn things around. But I remember the same situation last year or 2 years ago where I bet the Dolphins at home playing against the Raiders, and the Raiders came to play. I'm not envisioning this being a blowout score by the Dolphins for some reason. Instead, it's probably more of a low-scoring, run-heavy outing by both squads here because that's how both teams are able to successfully move the ball. Neither team is throwing well. Tyreek hasn't had a top 12 week since week 1. You mentioned Waddle. I mean, these guys are just – you're stuck. Like, what do? You can't drop them. You don't want to bench them. I don't know what to do. Like, Jonnu Smith and DeVonta have been the most consistent pass catchers. It's just a really frustrating situation. I think I'm still starting Tyreek Hill everywhere I have him. I'm still starting Jalen Waddle unless I have someone better. But I'd view Waddle as like a top-end wide receiver 3. So I don't know how many squads have that luxury of somebody better. Maybe somebody coming off injury or someone streamable in a good matchup. But it's really tough for anyone who owns any of these Dolphins players.
Well, there's some people that have 5 of the top 25 wide receivers. So there are some people out there, Tyler, that don't have to worry about this. But I think a lot of people do. Tyler Beaker of FantasyGuru.com. Let's talk about Thursday Night Football tonight and kind of get your thoughts on how this is going to go. We got obviously Washington, Philadelphia, nice matchup. One of those Thursday matchups where it's like, all right, let's go. This is something to watch. Let's start out on the Washington side of things. You know, they're welcoming back Brian Robinson tonight. You know, they've had success through the air with Daniels and McLaurin. Things have slowed down a little bit recently as a passing attack. Talk to us, first of all, about the passing attack of the Commanders. Do you see it being a nice matchup tonight with the Eagles where they can have some success through the air?
Yeah, you mentioned the high game total, 48.5 right now. The Commanders, they're not super high in pass rate over expectation. They come in 10th right now. They are a very quick-paced team in terms of no huddle rate, kind of average in terms of plays per game. I'm saying all these like volume stats because that's kind of the template I want to lead with before we get into passing, because this offensive line is really banged up. They could be without all 3 of their top 3 tackles in the depth chart. Center Tyler Biadasz is also battling multiple injuries. And this is tough because they face an Eagles defense that's top 10 in pass rush win rate, pardon me. They're bottom 5 in fantasy points per game allowed to opposing quarterbacks. They are giving up the 4th lowest completion rate, 6th lowest passing touchdown rate. They are the lowest in yards per attempt at 6.1, 3rd fewest passing yards. So on paper, no, this is not a great matchup for Jaden Daniels throwing-wise. And Daniels has really dialed back his rushing as well. They just kind of haven't been really utilizing him in that capacity over recent weeks. I'm curious to see if he does it out of necessity this week or if the tackles kind of don't allow that. If like the edge guys for Philadelphia are able to get home. He does average, like, I think it's 46 rushing yards per game right now. So there's at least that in terms of insulating Daniels' fantasy floor. And there's the fact that I envision the Eagles they're playing at home. They're 3.5 point favorites, 4 points in some books. I think the Eagles are playing from ahead comfortably for most of this game. With that game script unfolding, I envision Daniels playing in trailing script where he'll need to throw and make plays. And for that reason, I still think Daniels has top 5, top 6 upside. I'm just not viewing this as a 35-point banger, like the one where he breaks the slate.
Right. If he's throwing the ball, it's going to Terry McLaurin, of course. One of the Brown boys next up, like, is there really a second option here as a pass catcher that you get excited about with the Commanders?
No, I mean, Ertz has that second target share in terms of like percentage-wise at 20%, but what are we getting from Ertz? 4 or 5 catches? Maybe in a narrative-led game. The last time Ertz played the Eagles, I was with Arizona 1 or 2 years ago. What did he get? 10 targets and like 6 or 8 catches. So he was actually utilized quite a bit. Curious to see if there's a narrative play here at all. But no, I'm not really bullish on Noah Brown. Not even bullish on Terry McLaurin, to be honest. The Eagles are giving up the 6th fewest fantasy points to the outside. They're also really great against the deep ball. 4th lowest completion percentage allowed on 20-plus air yard throws. So this is not a spot where I think we'll see McLaurin go for like 150. I could be wrong. He has pretty good games against Darius Slay throughout his career, but I'm just not really buying McLaurin as the DFS captain type in terms of showdown.
Tyler Beaker of FantasyGuru.com joins us every Thursday at about 12:30 Eastern Standard Time. Let's talk about the running game with the Commanders now. We got the news that Brian Robinson has missed time with the hamstring injury. He's back, so they'll slot him as their early down guy. They'll have Ekeler there, kind of the 1-2 punch that's been successful this year. You mentioned concerns about the offensive line. Where are you at this week with the running game of the Commanders against the Eagles?
Yeah, the offensive line's a bit scary. Eagles are a tough run defense, too. They're 5th in EPA per rush, 10th in lowest rush success rate allowed, giving up the second fewest fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. So out of the gate, given the fact that Brian Robinson's also coming off injury, multi-week soft tissue injury, it's not really something I'm excited to click on in redraft settings. The Eagles have allowed 3.7 yards per carry over the last 5 outings to opposing backs. And again, Robinson to me is more of like a touchdown hunting play, where if he doesn't reach the end zone, we're probably left with like a weak flex end result. I'd rather play Ekeler and Ryan Vision to be trailing script. He nearly doubles Brian Robinson in both route participation and target share. So giving him as a superior flex play. But again, I'm not crazy about these guys in terms of like them like racking up a ton of yardage unless it's like through the air for Ekeler.
All right, let's go to the other side of things here, Tyler. You got the jersey on, so you must be feeling pretty good about the Eagles, or you just wanted to look cool because you knew I couldn't get the background to work for me today, so I've got my green screen up. I think the first guy to talk about for me with this Eagles team, there's a lot of weapons here, but I want to talk to you about DeVonta Smith in particular because he's not produced here of late since he's returned from injury. There's reasons for it and everything like that. But there's more questions, I think, than there should be about DeVonta Smith. Like, to me, he's always a top 25 wide receiver. Like, that's what history tells us, and that's, to me, the matchup or not, that's what we usually get. Where are we at with DeVonta Smith tonight? Do you feel, again, that he's a solid play tonight in this matchup with the Commanders?
So he'll face a very man-heavy defense here with the Commanders, and Jalen Hurts, really great stats against man coverage. That really trickles down as well to his wideouts. A.J. Brown really being the big primary beneficiary of that. The good thing about Brown and Smith is we know the targets are rather consolidated for Philadelphia. These two make up about 70% of all targets when the Eagles face man-heavy defenses. The problem is A.J. Brown is far, far more efficient. He has a 5.12 yards per round rate against man coverage. And Dallas Goedert's actually been more efficient than Smith against man coverage as well. I do think that there's a chance for a rebound here for Smith. If you look at last week's matchup, he had 3 targets, 2 catches. The one miss was a errant throw by Jalen Hurts, where I think he had Smith open for like a 65-yard would-be touchdown had it been on the dot. Unfortunately, he got pressured, really threw like kind of a hurried throw, so it kind of went in. It was inaccurate. But I feel like people are viewing Smith in a negative light, where I still think there's a chance to rebound here, and this is a pretty decent matchup for it to happen. Brown's probably going to get Benjamin St. Juste in terms of most of his matchups. Smith will get Mike Sanderstill, who's kind of a up-and-down rookie. They've had him play in the slot and outside. So, again, the Eagles are implied for 26 points. I think it's a good spot for Smith. I'm with you, where he's just kind of a set-and-forget back-end wide receiver 2, top-end wide receiver 3. And for better or worse, you just kind of ride the variance there. This is a spot where I think he has a pretty good floor.
Tyler, what about Dallas Goedert? Right before he got hurt, he had a 160-yard game or whatever. He had a 7-catch game. There was injuries. They had to lean on him. Then he got hurt. And, I think it's easy to say Dallas Goedert's a top 12 tight end every week. I think that's pretty fair, right? Just because of the position and his role in this offense. Do you view him as a top 12 tight end this week? And how does the matchup favor or not favor Dallas Goedert?
Top 12 tight end. That's such an interesting question after the way the position started this year. I would say, hell, anybody could be that in any given week. But yeah, I'll throw Goedert in there. I mean, again, 26 points. We're trying to find some ways to get touchdowns. Goedert caught one last week. This is a matchup where the Commanders are top 12 in fantasy points per game allowed with the position. I really don't know how pass heavy these Eagles will be, though. Like, I want to play Jahan Dotson for the revenge narrative, but I'm probably really just going to look at that in the props market instead of like actually doing anything notable with it fantasy-wise in seasonal leagues or DFS Showdown. That said, I think Goedert's more of like a risky tight end play this week, just because I don't envision the Eagles throwing a ton. This is a team that's been super run heavy ever since their week 5 bye, and the Commanders are I think they're number 1 in terms of the highest run rate against over expectation, as teams are actively shifting to the run. So if we have the Eagles here working with a lead at home, maybe there's minimal target volume to Goedert. So he's that risky tight end 12. He could be a tight end 25 finisher or like a tight end 8. Really depends if he reaches the end zone or not.
By the way, speaking of Dotson, are you surprised? I mean, he's basically washed out with 2 organizations. He scored 7 touchdowns as a rookie, I think. I remember interviewing him at the Super Bowl and thinking to myself, this dude's small.
He is.
He's very small. He was a really nice guy, very bright, very, seemed like a really nice guy. But I'm 6'4", but I'm like, this guy's small. Are you surprised? Like, he went from an ascending player that people were excited about to a guy who can't even get a football thrown his way.
I want to know what happened with Washington. That makes no sense to me. Why they let go of him after 1 year, right, or 2 years? It was 2 years. I'm sorry.
2 years, yeah.
And then why of all places you sent him to a divisional rival. I would love a 30 for 30 on that. Like, what the heck happened? I don't think we're gonna get one of a player of his caliber, but former round 1 pick. I'm a Penn State guy. I know this guy's a great vertical weapon. They just really haven't utilized him in Philadelphia. They haven't really needed him. And they've got the one guy out of Florida State who scored a touchdown last week. I'm blanking on his name right now. But he's like a 6'6", big-bodied wideout. He makes more sense to me in this case with how this Eagles offense is being run in terms of seeing more time on the field. Let me just say this. If I'm a dynasty owner of Jahan Dotson, I'm not parting ways at all. I think better days lie ahead, and he's been drawn a really poor hand these last 2 years specifically. I think there's a lot more growth there. He's a great vertical weapon, and I think he has a chance to blossom into a full well-rounded player with more playing time. He just needs to get that playing time. Top best case scenario, we're probably looking at a wide receiver 2 for a team, but that's still valuable. So I would not freak out if I'm a Dotson owner, and I wouldn't even mind trying to acquire him low key right now, like while he's kind of cheap.
Johnny Wilson is the guy.
Johnny Wilson, thank you.
I was thinking Anaya Smith, but that's not. It's Johnny Wilson. Saquon Barkley has been a star this year. You're going to tell me he's a running back 1 this week, as he is every week. Are you surprised he's been as productive he has with the tush push? Because I think that, like, Saquon Barkley, I think, 7 or 8 of the touchdowns Ertz has are from the 1 yard line. And I think I saw something that, like, Barkley's been tackled like 9 times inside the 2 or something this year. Like, he's getting it to the goal line over and over again. He could be having a Derrick Henry season. He could be having a massive season if he got in the end zone. Is there any reason for it to change? And should anyone be upset that it is the way it is? Because, hell, he's still a top 3 guy.
Yeah, he's been tackled at the 1 or 2 yard line 10 different times this year. Okay. He's touched the ball 3 times after that, only scoring 1 touchdown. What the hell, man?
Yeah. That's not normal.
So he is very, very due, very due for a multi-touchdown game. This is a phenomenal spot for it to occur. I'll be honest. The Commanders, like I said, 32nd in pass rate over expectation against. They're 4th in yards per carry, 6th in rushing yards per game allowed to opposing backs, 5th highest rate of explosive runs. And this offensive line, they get back left tackle Jordan Mailata. That's huge for an offensive line that already ranked 3rd in yards before contact per attempt. The Commanders are bottom 3 in yards before contact allowed. I think Barkley rips some big ones here. Pardon the phrasing there. I think he's on track for a very, very big outing. Tough to bet his prop, though. I think he's at 92, 93 yards. I'd rather just go like an alt of give me 100 plus and a touchdown. Let me combine it. Let's say he finally doesn't get tackled at the 1 or 2, and we get some plus odds on those plays. Yeah, I mean, like top 3 play. If you're playing any Thursday through Monday DFS, he's the guy that I would love to get into a lineup.
And remember, you can see it on the screen there for those of you that don't see it. $99 the rest of the way. All the football seasonal, all the football DFS, all the football wagering, all of it, including all of Tyler's work in all 3 areas. Tyler Beaker, fantasyguru.com. Before we go to the room here and get some of the questions answered, you always have a bet for us, Tyler. And again, that's part of the package, $99 the rest of the way. Subscribe tab, top right corner. Send a note to support@fantasyguru.com if you got a question. What do we got tonight? We got a player prop. We got an over/under. Are we going defense? You've been doing some defensive stuff. Which way are we going tonight?
Yeah, we're going to hit Jalen Hurts under 27.5 pass attempts. Now, this is a play that's already – I posted it this morning at 7 a.m. It's already at 26.5 at all books aside from FanDuel, so hurry now before it moves to there as well. Right. This is just a great spot, like I said, volume-wise for the Eagles to rack up the rushing volume. I had been looking to play a Saquon prop, but I can't do it in good conscience throwing out like a 92-yard line. It just – there's too many outs for that to go wrong. Yeah. So I'm playing this instead. Instead of attacking his inflated lines, give me a correlated play where I'm betting on Saquon to have success, and it comes at the expense of the passing game. So Jalen Hurts over his last 5 games, pass attempt totals of 25, 14, 20, 24, and 20. So he has 0 for 5 clearing this 27.5 line. The Commanders are 32nd in the league in pass attempts per game faced. 8 of 10 opponents have had 28 or fewer attempts against this team, and that's right at that line at 27.5. But we add in Hurts' rushing tendency, 10.3 attempts per game. We add in all the pass rate over expectation stuff I've been referencing throughout the game. We talk about the explosive plays, the addition of left tackle Jordan Mailata. It just seems like a game where the Eagles are able to just lean on the run game, chew clock, limit plays for Washington, and just limit the overall dropbacks necessary for Hurts to get to this number. I really like this under 27.5.
You said you got it at 27.5. You've now seen it at 26.5. How low does it go where you stop suggesting it? Because you're okay with 26.5, but if it goes below that,
yeah, that's where we draw the line, 26.5. Okay. So move now. Like I said, 27.5 is still available on FanDuel if you're available to get that.
Tyler Beaker of FantasyGuru.com. If you're watching us on YouTube.com/@ElitePlusNetwork or on Facebook at Facebook.com/FantasyGuruHQ, you can interact with us live, right? Ask questions, leave comments, and we're going to address some of those right now. You can do that every day, Monday through Friday here on the show. Austin's got a question. Everyone wants to know what's going on with Jonathan Brooks. Jonathan Brooks and DeAndre Hopkins out to get back the lunatic, who's a pretty good pass catcher, and Mr. Pickens. For those people that go watch the interception that was thrown toward Pickens last week. If you don't, he just grabs a defensive player and just throws him to the ground, like 30 feet behind the ball. Like it's just, he's a lunatic, but he's a good football player. And he certainly has taken his game to the next level, predictably, with Wilson under center instead of Fields. Do you trade Brooks and Hopkins to get Pickens? Is that enough of an improvement over Hopkins when you have to throw in Brooks?
I don't mind it. I'll say that Pickens has really taken off since the change to Wilson. Phenomenal target volume, huge yardage. This dude's just picking up yardage in chunks, and that's the way Wilson likes to play. Moonballs to the perimeter. This is a phenomenal matchup for him against Baltimore this week. I like this trade if you're kind of frustrated with Brooks. The problem is, have you been holding Brooks for 11 weeks? Are you going to do it right now? Yeah. Chiefs are also a team where I envision dinking and dunking the rest of the way. That's how they've been operating. This is not a vertical passing Chiefs offense. So Hopkins has a lot of appeal in that format to me as like a 10-yard kind of curl guy, quick little outs, quick little slants. Juju on again, off again. Juju's hamstrings are made of rubber. Rubber bands, pardon me. They're really weak rubber bands ready to snap at any point. I think it's a fair deal. I'll say that. I would only do this if you're in a format where you have a limited set of starters and the players you put in the starting lineup matter more in that situation.
Yeah, I like how you said that. Jared K has the following question. Downs, who we're both concerned with because of the change to Richardson. Jamison Williams, who gets 4 targets a week and really has to hit that big one. Or Darnell Mooney, who is consistently getting 8 targets a week, consistently catching 5 passes a week, and actually has been the most consistent of these 3 guys this season. In a PPR, Mooney, Downs, or Jamison Williams?
I will put Downs last here. I just think there's a lot of variability with Anthony Richardson under center. They draw the Jets here. A lot of cover 4, a lot of man. I'm not sure how well Richardson can read that. Mooney has a tough matchup, though. Denver is a really stout pass defense. Best news is London will likely have Surtain the second on him for most of that game. So Mooney will have a little bit lighter coverage. Picked up 95 or 96 yards last week and had about 80-plus yards of unrealized air yards. So there's a lot of potential for Mooney to go nuclear. It's also a good spot for Jamison. They draw a very man-heavy Jaguars team, and when the Lions play man, we've seen Jared Goff spread the ball around. It's not really the Amon-Ra St. Brown show. He's more of the zone-heavy kind of wide receiver for them. So I'm between Mooney and Jameson. I'm going to lean Mooney just because of what we've seen to date. He just has the higher floor and the better track record beyond weeks 1 and 2.
Greg L's got a question. Everyone's just asking a question about Pacheco and Hunt in one form or another. So let's, in essence, ask you the question. Greg is asking, do I trade Ford and Tillman to get Pacheco because I have Hunt? Now, again, I get the line of thought. It makes sense. Pacheco is almost certain to not play this week. The hope is he'll return for the next game for the Chiefs. Let's put it out there. If he goes the Jonathan Brooks route, he may not still play until December because Jonathan Brooks was eligible a long time ago. They opened up Jonathan Brooks' window. They didn't put him on the active roster. So, a lot of people are in on Pacheco getting 20 touches like next week. Does this make sense? Tillman is basically a top 25 wide receiver at this point. So I don't mind throwing in Ford if you got to, because Ford is really just a handcuff right now. Do you do this deal? Is it worth it to get an injured Pacheco if you have Hunt?
I don't mind it. I'll say that I think in this lineup, I'm probably starting Tillman most weeks. I think he and DK are my locks, and I'm rotating between DeVonta and Ridley as my wide receiver 3. I get it. Well, I'll just say that because I mentioned the Chiefs being a dink and dunk offense. They're also extremely run heavy relative to other seasons. In years past, they've been a team that's just consistently been among the league leaders in pass rate over expectation. That's not the case this year. They are doing long, sustained drives, leaning on the running backs. And if you have the RB cornerback or the RB room cornered here between Pacheco and Hunt, I can get behind that. I think it's a fair deal if you really just want to back up that RB situation. I think it depends on your RBs, and if you have nobody beyond Hunt, you're like stuck with like Jalen Warren level players or worse, then I'm doing this deal.
Hal's got a question. Zach Moss is on the injured list. It seems like his season is over now with the neck injury. They made a move to bring in Khalil Herbert. We said, hey, look, if you lost Moss, obviously grab Herbert. Even if you don't, grab Herbert because, he's one injury away to Chase Brown from having a huge role. So there's a question for Hal. Is Cincinnati a team that's going to use 2 backs enough to play Herbert? Seemed like they want 2 guys under the coaching regime. Now, I would have said that yes, because that's how it worked with Moss and Brown. Now, the last 2 weeks that they've played games here, Chase Brown has got 54 touches. He's averaging 27 touches a game. And does that other running back have like 1 touch? Like legitimately, he has like 98% of the touches the last 2 weeks. Now, Herbert coming in the trade has to take some time to, he'll be out there. He'll see the field more than he has, last time out. I'm not starting. I think it's suicide to start Khalil Herbert this week. Maybe he ends up, getting a role where he's getting it, 10 times a week like Moss was. But right now, I think it's suicide to play Khalil Herbert.
Yeah, he fumbled his very first carry last week and I think he was benched the rest of the game.
He played a hand just like 2 or 3 snaps. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he didn't see any more carries though. I think they were just passing down stuff or things that they were clearly not using the running back for. He's just out there. Yeah, I'm with you where it's surprising to see that shift mid-season in terms of RB usage, not to lean on just one singular back. To lean on one singular back instead of 2. So yeah, I'm with you on. I think Chase Brown, is a very, very strong play rest of season. I think he's a top 24 option every single week. And Herbert, we're in wait and see mode with Herbert. We got to see it first. And I think it's okay. We don't need to have every answer right away.
Right. Good point. And that doesn't mean you drop Khalil Herbert if he plays 12 snaps and gets 4 touches this week, because he's the same guy after that game as he is right now. I talked about that earlier in the show today. Jim C has a question. Is it crazy to bench Jaden Daniels, who you listed there's some concerns with tonight, for Jared Goff? What do you think? I mean, that's it. On the surface, it's like you got to play Daniels, and you might still ultimately say play Daniels. Goff, for all the good, this is not to me about the 5 interceptions last week. That's a one-off. Who cares? I think it goes back to kind of what you were talking about with Jalen Hurts. Goff is throwing the ball 24 times a game, right? He's just not throwing the ball. So, Goff or Daniels this week? Which way are you going?
It's a good question. Goff plays back at home this week. They've got the Jaguars who, again, I just mentioned Sam Darnold dropped 400 yards of offense on this defense. Jaguars are not great. Goff, however, he could be like that 15 of 18 kind of game where if he doesn't get to the end zone 1 or 2 times, then we're probably looking at a very low ceiling kind of performance. I'd rather go Jaden Daniels in the event that this game turns into a shootout. Many people are expecting it to be. I think I'm just kind of pessimistic about it, where I'm not expecting it to be. I think Eagles run away with it. Mm-hmm. But even if they do, like that's great for Daniels, where he's fighting back in a game. He's not just handing the ball off to Brian Robinson 20 times. So I'm going Daniels here for the variability. I think there's a higher ceiling case, and I always want to play the higher ceiling case in these types of head-to-head formats.
Question from Brad McCoy, who really wanted this question answered because Brad actually spent money for this, Tyler. So let's give Brad a good answer. This is very important here. Yeah, I know, right? Wanted your advice so much you paid for it. Didn't even get a product over at fantasyguru.com. Just did it right here. Okay, so he lists a bunch of wide receivers he has. But then he says, I'm concerned with DJ Moore. Fair. I'm concerned with Jalen Waddle. Fair. Chris Olave may not play again this season. Obviously a concern there. And I talked about Thomas earlier, Brian Thomas with the Jaguars. Spotty quarterback play. He's not performed since he got hurt. He's had 11 targets in 3 games, not seen a lot of volume. So while on the surface, this is a great group, sitting here in week 11, not so great. So he then mentions that he's got a pretty good backfield of Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, Hunt, Chubb, and Tracy. That is a pretty good backfield. What are some wide receivers he should go after? Now, and this is a good question because it always comes up, and it's very difficult to answer because we don't know who wants the players you've got. We don't know what their asks are, that kind of a thing. Brad has all these names. Again, Amon-Ra St. Brown, DJ Moore, Chris Olave, Waddle, Thomas, Jacoby Myers. Like, this looks like a great group. But right now, he is listing. Do you have some wide receivers you can go after? And would a guy like T. Higgins, who we talked about earlier, would he be on this list? Would you consider adding a guy like T. Higgins, who has been a strong every week starter, catching a ball from Joe Burrow, who I said earlier is the best non-running quarterback in fantasy right now? Would you take that risk, given a guy like Higgins has got injury issues? So talk us through this one a little bit. You got some names here for Brad, excuse me?
Yeah, good question. I'm looking at these names here, and so let's just put Olave to the side. Let's assume he's not playing the rest of the season. Brian Thomas Jr. has a really plus matchup here against the Lions. Superman heavy. Brian Thomas Jr. great stats against man. And it's not the same pass rush. So Mac Jones got really thrown into the wolves here, playing against a very blitz heavy Vikings defense last week. We've seen numerous quarterbacks fare poorly against this defense. Brock Purdy, CJ Stroud. I think it's a rebound spot for Mac Jones where they can actually be competitive against the Lions, who without Aiden Hutchinson, they're down 2 of their top pass rushers. So there's a chance that this team does really well here. I envision Brian Thomas Jr. I'm actually going to put him in my DFS article this week as a sneaky play. Jacoby Myers, also a good spot on the outside against the Dolphins, who just allowed, 98 yards to Puka. Good spot for him as well. So I think I'm less concerned about your wideouts than you may be. DJ Moore, I'm also not throwing the towel in on the Bears like everybody. I think everyone's kind of there are plays that are being left on the field by Caleb Williams for sure. But I do think better days are ahead, and DJ Moore is the singular Bears wide receiver to prioritize there. So I don't think you're in a dire spot where you need to do any kind of fire sale here. That said, you do have some trade material here, trade fodder, in some of these running backs. I know a lot of people are interested in Chubb this week against the Saints. Mm-hmm. Maybe you wait until a ceiling performance to sell Chubb high. I won't man that at all. Hunt's window's closing rapidly, so if he would probably be the guy to sell. Maybe you go after one of the Higgins. I could see an argument for Higgins. I'll be honest with you, I don't usually like to trade for wideouts that are coming off injury. So him or Mike Evans are guys I'm not interested in. But I see this Tillman note, and Tillman's very appealing to me. I wouldn't mind doing this one, Tillman for Tracy. I think Tillman's a guy that he'll consistently see good volume with Jameis. Good matchup here against the Saints, who are absolutely depleted at cornerback this week. Tillman would be a plug-and-play option right away for you. And Tracy on bye. I get this move. I think I like this one quite a bit.
I agree. I think that one makes sense given what we're looking at here. I have no problem doing that one, Brad. I agree with Tyler. What about the idea, what about the idea of doing a 2-for-1?
Yeah.
Would you be interested in that? Because again, like you said, there's a believer. Someone in your league believes in DJ Moore. Someone believes in Waddle. Someone believes in Thomas. Like these are not guys that are not unusable, right? So you make the move to get Tillman. We now have an overabundance of wide receivers. Do you then maybe go 2-for-1 and see? Again, you never know how people view players, so it's really difficult without having specifics. But there's so much depth here because other than Olave, all these guys are startable. I mean, Olave's the only one because he's out, right? He's on the IR. All these guys are startable. They're just not guys that and grow a lot of confidence in you when you put them in their lineup.
And I'm looking at players that you might be able to buy low on. Garrett Wilson's coming off a bit of a dud, but he's been consistently utilized. Drake London didn't really have a massive outing this past week. Zay Flowers coming off a bit of a dud. Cortland Sutton's been highly consistent. Like, there's some options for you.
Does adding a guy like Cortland Sutton move the needle here? I agree, he's a good guy to get, but is he appreciably different than Jacoby Myers or Waddle? You know what I mean? It's like, do you then run into a scenario where Brad's going to have 5 guys that are all separated by 9 spots in the rankings and not know who to start? Do you worry about that a little bit too?
That's fair. I usually feel a bit bullish on my ability to pick start sits. That might be an edge that I hold, I think, as an analyst, but
right.
It's not always easy to do for everybody with like 6 wideouts. I'm looking over here on my other screen at some possible wide receivers for you to trade for.
Right. Would you make a move on CeeDee Lamb?
I was just thinking at the top, guys like AJ Brown or Debo.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you do one of those kinds of trades.
CeeDee Lamb, would he be of interest, or are you out on CeeDee Lamb because of the way the offense is right now? Because a lot of people are looking at CeeDee Lamb. I've had questions that people seem to think he's a wide receiver 3 now. So I don't know. I mean, is he a target if the price is reasonable?
Do you think he is?
you think he's a wide receiver 3 the rest of the way? I mean, I'm asking you. That's a fair question. I mean, to me,
I don't know who the quarterback.
I'd say a 2.
I don't know who the QB is.
Yeah, well, they don't know who the QB is. It's Trey Lance. It's QB. He's wide receiver 7.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, DeVonta Smith, the guy we talked about earlier, he would be a good target too because he hasn't done much of late, and there's people questioning whether they should even start him. But then again, for Brad, we're ending up with, again, all these guys are wide receiver, besides Amon-Ra St. Brown, they're all wide receiver 18 to 32 every week. So I don't know. At least those are some names there. And finally, one last follow-up for Brad. The guy that has Tillman also has T. Higgins. So would you rather have Tillman or Higgins if you're sending away Tracy?
It's very close. I might prefer Tillman, but I don't think it's a huge gap. And again, I'm more of I know when to take my risks, and with soft tissue injuries, they're just not one that I generally want to gravitate toward, especially with a player that's had a recurring injury like Higgins.
And I would also point out that Cincinnati's got a bye next week. So Tillman's already had his bye. That was last week, right? So, that's a good teaching point here for everyone that, and I keep bringing this up a lot in Discord over at fantasyguru.com. You got to check the schedule because we're at that point of the season. It's one thing to make a trade in week 3 and you'll worry about it later. The season's over half done, right? Giving a game up now if you're pushing for the playoffs is huge. Like, you may only have 4 weeks of the season left before your team's done. You can't be giving up a week of that by adding a player that's on a bye and only getting 75% of the games that are left. So keep that in mind. So anytime it's like close, obviously go with the guy that doesn't have the bye. So hope that helps you out, Brad. Thanks for the question and the time. We really appreciate it. And for everyone had the questions and everything over in the Discord or the chat room, at Facebook or at YouTube. Tyler's on with us every Thursday at about 12:30 Eastern Standard Time, 9:30 Pacific Time. Don't forget to go to fg.com right now. Sign up for that package right now, $99 for everything. And that includes all the work that Tyler does. That includes live streams, articles, bets, wide receiver, cornerback, all kinds of matchup stuff. Give us the rundown. You always do. There's a lot, but what do you got coming down the next couple of days, Tyler?
Well, I've already got some of it in the rearview mirror, so it's easier to do the look ahead of what I got left to go for the week. Today I'll be doing my DFS wide receiver column, basically looking at 10 or so plays that are at various price points that I think are great for single entry, 3-max entry, cash games, or tournaments, and then a few punts as well, guys that are priced pretty low on both DraftKings and FanDuel. Saturday, I'll be doing my game script article where I go game by game, looking at how game flow, game volume, matchups, how they all correlate and come together. That's a really big article, usually about 10,000 words. It takes me 2 to 3 days to write. And then Sunday, you can catch me in our Discord from 11 to 1. We'll be answering any kind of start sits that you guys have. I skipped over Friday's DFS show. Sorry, DFS, I do a video show, 7 p.m. Eastern. This week we will have on the great Jorge Pucks. Excited to talk to him. I do our wide receiver DFS coach. He does our tight end DFS coach and a lot of other stuff for our site. He's a great follow, Jorge. So really excited about this week. I think week 11 is a really fun one. There's 4 teams on bye. We don't have the London games. We don't have the Germany games. So there's some spots for our opponents to make mistakes, and I'm hoping that we can capitalize.
Yeah, when I'm up at 6:30 in the morning on Sunday, I won't have to watch a game. I'll just get ready for tweeting, right? That'll be nice. Welcome change. Tyler Beaker of fantasyguru.com. Again, to get all that work that he just talked about, subscribe tab in the top right corner of the page. Click on it, $99.99 the rest of the way. The only thing you don't get is the Super Bowl betting guide. Everything else, DFS, seasonal betting, $99 over at fantasyguru.com. Tyler, thanks for your time today. Really appreciate it. We'll talk to you in a week. Make sure you get some rest. I know you're busy. Get some rest. Take a nap here and there. Make sure you get some good night's sleep, that kind of stuff. Drink the coffee, whatever it might be, and we'll talk to you in about a week.
Coffee's the path. Good luck, everybody. Have a good week.
He's Tyler Beaker. I'm Ray Flowers. We'll be back here tomorrow on the show at 12 o'clock Eastern Time. Fantasy Sports Daily, Monday through Friday. Type in Fantasy Sports Daily to your podcast network. Check us out on YouTube. Check us out on Facebook. Check us out on Twitter X at Fantasy Guru site. Go to fantasyguru.com. Click that Elite Plus tab at the top of the page. You can find this show and all the others on the Elite Plus network. For Tyler, I'm Ray. We'll see you on Friday. This has been Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by fantasyguru.com.